and then going back to kind of like talking about gear drops and whatnot, like there's a question of like getting tokens for gear drops versus getting the gear drops directly. One of the interesting things is that Final Fantasy XIV kind of does both depending on the raids. Some of the raids will basically drop the item which you have to roll for against other people, and some of the raids will drop tokens where you need like 4 of one token to get a chest piece, you need 2 of another token in order to get boots, you need 1 of another token to get accessories. And so for a lot of these, generally you're kind of competing against other people for that drop. Other times, like if you like for the extreme trials, a lot where you're fighting primals, you'll generally get a totem drop. Every time you do it, you'll get a totem drop, and usually you can turn in like the primals will drop weapons. But if you don't get the weapon you want, because it's a random weapon, you may not get the weapon for the class you want. You can usually turn in about 10 totems for the weapon of choice, and then eventually it becomes like you can turn in 99 of these tokens, meaning you run the damn thing 99 times in order to get one of the special mount drops that is super rare.
Back.
Welcome back.
Oh, I forgot salt. I have food.
So you basically kind of have this, you have that is kind of wondering where you have a system like how do you reward people, and how often do you reward people, and what do you put limits on? Like Mulligan was talking about, one of the ways you can get upgrade your gear is through getting tomestones, which you get from doing a lot of normal content. They just really, and usually you can only get so many tomestones per week, and so you have to save up for a certain minimum number a week before you get all your gear for one class or one type of class.
Oh yeah, talking about the treadmill.
Yeah. Talking about the treadmill and like how items drop, where you drop items directly or you drop tokens.
Right.
Whereas, and I was talking about like the extreme primals, which tend to be kind of like some of the kind of the easier to mid-level raiding content. You get both. You can get a weapon drop from the primal, or you can get the totems where you can turn in 10 totems to get the item you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with the Jara. I hate the gear treadmill.
Well, I mean, again, this is part of the subscription. It's part of the business model. The subscription model works the longer you keep subscribed. So in order to kind of keep you interested in the game, you have to get on a treadmill, and you have to basically be getting gear in order to, you need to get this gear to go do this content, which gives you this gear to get this other content. Even if, whether that's dungeons, whether that's raids, whether that's whatever, they want to stretch out the amount of time that you're playing in order to, in order to maximize subscription revenue.
Understanding it and liking it are two different things.
This is true.
That's all I'm saying.
This is very, very true. No, this is very true. But I mean, again, this is one of the kind of the potential benefits of, of other business models besides subscription, is that you can have, like the developers have other motivations besides treadmills or whatnot. I would love to, personally, I would love to have a game that's a lot more focused on exploring, but
No Man's Sky.
Yeah, well, I mean, a multiplayer game that's based on exploring, but again, that's pretty tough because you have the a lot of times exploring is kind of synonymous with discovering things, and there's only so many things you can kind of discover in a game, especially given wikis and for games with a lot of with friendly plugins, like I remember World of Warcraft, like Wowhead and whatnot would have plugins where they would just scrape information that came through the client, collect it up, and then send it off to a central server to be processed. So that's how they populated the database full of World of Warcraft items, was that It was a plugin that was basically just scraping through things. You go, oh, this item dropped. Yeah, this is a. And, this person was in this area, so they can potentially make oh, this is a drop from this monster, or oh, this is a world drop, or whatever.
Well, No Man's Sky's getting a multiplayer update this summer, or it's getting improved.
Okay, so I'll clap my hands and say I believe in Tinkerbell, and then they'll.
Astroneers, that's an no.
Well, I mean, that is somewhat of an exploration type game. But as you and I have kind of seen that we've gotten the exploration. We've made the exploration part very efficient until you go and do something stupid and die.
Several times.
Several times. But I mean, again, because I think MMOs are a little special here because the idea that you want this content, you want for a lot of games you want to stretch out the subscription as much as possible, and also the idea that MMOs are not supposed to really have an ending makes it so that you get things like gear treadmills, which can be very frustrating and unfulfilling.
It's just a natural part of the development of things, unfortunately.
Right. And I mean, I can understanding it and liking it are two separate things. I mean, I admit, I've not kept up as much on Final Fantasy 14 grinding. I'm still a couple patches behind, just because I've just been not all that enthusiastic about doing content on my main guy. So
I'm a little more caught up. But I've just been doing my daily stuff. I haven't been doing actual content. Well, we're at the 3-hour mark. Do you have anything else you want to talk about, or you want to?
I mean, does anybody else? This is kind of something that I think some of the people that watch us might have a lot more opinion or information or questions about. So if anybody has any specific questions
or stories, if you have raid stories you want to tell,
right.
We'll read it on stream and you can be immortalized with us. And then you can send it to the people that you hate, and then they can be embarrassed because it's now on the internet. And
right. Well, I guess one other kind of topic I can talk about while people type things in was kind of the idea of shared versus individual rewards.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like I said, like in the early EverQuest, you would have a boss that would drop certain things, and only so many people get that. And this is like early, back in the early days, anybody could basically kind of walk by and loot the item if they were in the group that tagged the monster. And so a lot of times you'd have problems with people doing what's called ninja looting, where everybody would work to take down this monster, and then someone would just yoink the gear and run off. Often that would be kind of a very dangerous thing for them to do because then they were kind of like their name was spread far and wide to as a warning that this is the type of thing they do.
And then back then wasn't it? Oh, sorry. I mean, I'm talking about mouthful.
Yeah, you are.
Wasn't it a reportable offense too?
Oh yeah, eventually it became a reportable offense. Yeah, because again, the players kind of built up a lot of mechanisms and agreements and things like that. And eventually we got things like where you have the random looting system, or you can set things like you can set loot master in Final Fantasy 14 for stuff. People can't just kind of walk by and randomly. Again, keep in mind this world, so people can't just go and gang stuff. I guess the other problem you ran into is like if a body wasn't looted within a certain amount of time, then it became free for all.
Mm.
And so if you had a system where people were taking a while in order to figure out what they wanted to do, you could have somebody literally wander up, nab an item, and kind of wander off with it.
Yeah. Um, I don't think that was the thing in Star Wars Galaxies. I think the body's just decayed. I'm trying to think, but the thing with Star Wars Galaxies was for like grinding in general, because that was such of a just a mob grind game. Like even solo, that I'm sorry. Star Wars Galaxies had a very powerful macro system.
Mm.
It was actually strong enough that you could, in theory, bot within using macros. Like it was
Right.
so powerful that one of the legitimate methods of leveling up was to just create AFK macros. That because there was a loop command.
Right.
There's a loop argument string that you could inject.
Right.
So you could literally just tell the game, cycle through targets, attack valid enemy target with specific attacks, loop command.
Mm-hmm.
So you could literally just sit there, have that running, go sleep, and by the time you get back, you're like 20 levels higher.
Mm.
I didn't start doing that until later in the game. The only thing is that it was reportable if you were killing quest mobs that someone needed for a mission, quest, whatever. They could report you for botting if you were interfering with their gameplay. So there were very specific places you could go where there were mobs that were not tied to anything.
Mm.
So those were like high demand AFK areas. Oh, Mikey's got a story for us. Do you want to read it or do you want me to?
You go ahead and read it.
I mean, while my mouth is full.
I mean, if you can stop stuffing your mouth for like, I don't know, 2 minutes to read something.
It's gonna be really hard. I'm sorry. Okay, Mikey. Mikey's one sec. Let me get my reading voice on. Mikey says, my raid story. In WoW, I hit max level and thought I'd start getting gear to start raiding. Tier 0 gear, the precursor to Tier 1, because that's how math works. A guild advertised, wanted players to send in a resume, interview, and audition to be included in the guild. I hate those groups. I passed a few of them, but then they said they wanted me to raid 3 nights a week for multiple hours. At the time, I had just met this girl and thought there could be something with her, but the time to raid interfered. I had to make the choice of raid and WoW or...
Oh, cliffhanger. Oh my god.
Dun dun dun! Next time...
And now he's married to the raid drop he got.
Who will he spend time with? His raid guild or his girl? Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z. I'm sorry. I should make sure the story was finished first before I started reading.
So.
Oh, it didn't post the entire thing. It says. Okay, so, but the time to raid interfered. I had to make the choice of raid and WoW or date this woman. Easy choice. The woman is now my wife, and I disdain raiding for forcing me to make that choice.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the big problems you run into with raiding is that it's such a time-intensive activity that unless you're talking like the most absolutely most casual type of raiding, like where you can you can pug it, but like anything where you kind of have to have a static group, you got to learn mechanics together and you got to do things like that. Like you run into problems where the people that have the time to commit to it, it's fine. And again, like this kind of goes back to a lot of my kind of grouse about with kind of free to play games is like when you have a mechanic in a subscription based game that requires a lot of time, we see that as fine. Even though the reason that time sink is there is basically to keep you playing for longer periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that, but people see that as virtuous, even though not everybody has. But when in a free to play game, it's like, well, you have to pay for something. It's like, oh my god, look at the developers, sucking our wallet dry.
Well, I think I should look up some psychology papers about that. I'll look into that, and maybe we'll talk about go into that more in another time.
Right.
I've got to do some research, but I think there's a valid argument saying that most reasonable people value time over money.
Well, but I mean that's the opposite though. Is that that's kind of the opposite of what we're seeing in the MMOs with the current subscription based games versus free to play games.
Well,
is that people are willing to pour in a lot of their very limited time into a game, but when it comes to basically pouring when it comes to requiring money, besides flat rate subscription, a lot of people kind of feel that this is like a mortal insult.
Well, I'm thinking like a social environment. Other people will respect others more for investing their valuable time into something.
Right, but
I get what you're saying though. You're right.
Right. I mean, I would if I have a job making what $30 an hour, if I can spend $15 to bypass an hour of busy work, then that makes economic sense for me.
Right.
Because then I could take that hour that I would spend on busy work, go make $30 an hour, and come up $15 ahead. Again, economics tends to be kind of the dismal science for that reason. Dejara chimes up and says, on the other hand, I know a number of married couples who met rating. I mean, yeah, and I think that I think that's the kind of the flip side of that too. Is if you start looking at rating as kind of as a social activity, think of it like going bowling or hanging out at the bar or whatnot. Then you kind of change your perspective, and you kind of see people hang out together, people kind of form bonds, form friendships. And I think you look at EverQuest, and I think because of the way the game was structured, where there was a lot more kind of time sinks, there was a lot more time requirement, you had the necessary ingredients for people to kind of become friends with each other, by basically kind of bond together in groups.
Yeah, of all the hardcore rating that I did, I think I have one friend from those days that I still talk to on very rare occasion. Like if I log into BattleNet and they're on WoW, because they still play WoW, and they see that I'm on, they'll hit me up and just be like, "Oh hey, it's been a while. How are you doing?" But other than that, I don't keep up with any quote unquote friends that I made while I was raiding. Even though some of them I still think of very fondly towards,
Right. I mean, it's like any other friendship. Sometimes you have good friends that you fall out of touch with. I had some very good friends in the university that I got along with. Went drinking, hung out with. But we just kind of drifted apart. We didn't stay in touch. And so, a lot of times that's a little easier in an era of Facebook and whatnot, though.
For those of us that actually have Facebook.
Right. But anyway, like you said, we're at the 3-hour mark, so I think we had a good discussion here. Covered most of our topics.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, give me a sec. I'm so sorry, my face over here. I'm sorry.